not to be an alarmist, but if we're looking at Q Day and how that integrates with insurance, I think a lot of insurance companies are going to be maybe out of business by the time Q Day comes, if not before.
Welcome to the CNO podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of IT and security professionals to uncover their experiences, challenges, and best practices in today's ever-evolving tech landscape. I'm your host, Sedric Show Out Lusant, also known as your cyber expert. And today, I'm thrilled to welcome Barbara Shelton, CEO of Secure Shield Cybersecurity Insurance. How are you doing today, Barbara?
Hey, I'm good. It's a Tuesday. Everything's going on. Everything's happening, and especially in the world of cybersecurity. But, that's the great thing about cybersecurity in general. There's always something to learn, there's always something to do. And, I particularly like that. So it works for me.
I love that. That's one of the main reasons why I even got into the field because I have ADHD and I'm very open about it and I get bored pretty easily. And if
Hmm.
if I'm doing the same repetitive thing every single day, I almost feel like I want to rip my eyeballs out. So I love the
Hmm.
fact of vulnerabilities, new 0 days, new mandates, because it just keeps driving the innovation in this field. So, with all the different things going on around AI and these large language models being released, it's just only adding more intricacies to this landscape that I feel is just giving more job security. Yes,
Hmm.
some people might differ. So I know some people I talk to, they're like, well, people are losing their job. Yes, it's to be frank, yes, some people are going to lose their jobs when it comes to leveraging AI, but the AI is going to need people to manage it and to
Hmm.
use it effectively in a secure manner. So I feel like the opportunity is just going to come from leveraging these large language models and potentially, autonomous agents, or it's going to far vast outweigh the cons.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. No, completely agree with that. Some people, I mean I think people want the truth. The truth is that anything with automation comes with adjustments,
mhm,
and I especially like sometimes when I chat with like kids that are in well, I call them kids. I know they're, I've chatted with a lot of Gen Z that they are
mhm.
super quick. They're really smart. If I could have like a full staff of Gen Z employees, I would love it. I have like I love working with Gen Z. But yes, it's going to come with some adjustments, and I think the people that will be able to adapt to AI will embrace those adjustments, and some people won't, and that's just the way things progress.
I mean, even if
Yeah.
it wasn't AI, and with any other technology, there are
Mhm.
always those adjustment periods. Whereas if that technology is used for good, help increase efficiency, productivity, etc., if you don't adopt it into your tool set or to your processes, your competitors will,
Exactly.
and it's going to show. And we're in an AI arms race, and whether a lot of people know it in the world or not, but we've been in this arms race for quite some time. It's
Yeah.
just now we're actually making more leaps and bounds.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's a good point because I mean not to go on too much of a tangent, but I think that's a good point because a lot of people, that I've talked to that typically it's just like, "Oh, well AI is this new tooling." And it's like, "No, I mean generative AI, I mean some of the tooling goes back to the 80s and I mean some people argue even before that." So, generative AI and some of these other tooling specifically surrounding that, it's been around for a long time. It's just one of those things that it caught on. It's being utilized more efficiently now. It's being expected in business and as
more
cybersecurity,
accessible.
and it's more accessible. Yeah. So as cybersecurity practitioners, you have to adjust. Like I was chatting with this one. I mean, I call the analog computing group some of the individuals that, studied pretty much early 80s, 70s, things like that. I call them
The OGs.
yeah, they're the
That's what
OGs.
I call them.
I
That's what
love
I call them.
yeah, I love working with them because you learn so much about the analog process, and it helps, at least for me, it's definitely helped understand how to automate processes better. And they've said the same thing to me, like, Barbara, if you think this is the last time your career is going to evolve, they went from almost complete analog computing to now look where we are, and they've had to adjust, and they've just given that advice. And I think it's good advice to
Mhm.
remember, we're all going to have to adjust, and that's exciting.
Yep.
It's an exciting
It
thing.
really is. And
Yeah.
with quantum computing right around the corner, I feel like it's only going to be even crazier.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm actually in a quantum networking and computing course to help understand how to better utilize like Qiskit and things like that with the University of
Mhm.
Chicago, and it's a great course. I'm not trying to like plug it or anything, but
That's awesome.
it's because I for myself I don't always buy into the hype immediately. I'm like, okay, quantum AI. I don't know that I want to immediately buy into it without testing it, I guess. But this course has been phenomenal so far, and it's kind of opened my eyes on some things for quantum. And I mean, going back to, I really only took this course because, this year I started a cybersecurity insurance agency independent and was looking at some items related to insurance and what that looks like for emerging technologies and things like that, because the
Mhm.
company Secure Shield, we really are looking at what what insurance is how insurance is going to right now serve customers, but then what that looks like from even 2 years from now. And I think that's
Mhm.
overall what I've seen working with other insurance providers has been really the challenge. And I'm coming from a technical background, but I just saw the need in the market and with other businesses and people I've worked with or been on the receiving end of working with insurance, and
Getting
it
screwed
turned
over.
yeah, absolutely. You get screwed over, and then insurance, I mean, I don't know if I should dive into like all the intricacies and things like that, but definitely that's the reason I took that course is okay, I'm building a cybersecurity insurance company for all industries that are related to cyber to really help them and help what other like processes that they need
Yep.
in connection with insurance. But what does that also look like when something like quantum happens? Effectively, especially now that I'm in the course, I really understand that, and not to be an alarmist, okay, not to be an alarmist, but if we're looking at Q Day and how that integrates with insurance, I think a lot of insurance companies are going to be maybe out of business by the time Q Day comes, if not before, just because of the mass amounts of data loss and recovery that would need to happen during that time. How could an insurance company pay out premiums at that point? They're not as at this from my evaluation. This is Barbara CEO opinion. Currently, I think this insurance industry is really not established to maintain insurance, cybersecurity insurance for small, medium-sized businesses, and definitely not for large corporations. So that's kind of
Definitely not.
yeah.
Definitely not. And just in my experience alone with some of these carriers, and I've was around when cyber policies really started to really boom
Mhm.
in 2013, 2014.
Mhm.
And then of course a lot of attacks happened over the years, and we started seeing all these exclusions get written into the policies
Yeah.
for almost every last little thing, to where companies will think that, oh yeah, we got cyber insurance, but in reality they weren't doing something that they were supposed to be doing
Mhm.
that now voids their insurance, and they didn't have an understanding of these things. But the carrier, they wrote the policy, they're collecting the premium, and when something happens, that's when you really find out when the crap really hits the fan. So the
Yeah.
fact that you're working to put together a product and offer that to the market, I think is great. So can you talk to me a little bit, like typically, like let's say I'm a small medium sized business and I'm worried about a cyber event and I need cyber coverage.
Mhm.
How would you guys come into play to help us out?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I mean, cyber insurance really revolves around risk, and I would really encourage small, medium businesses, even large corporations, if your insurance company is not helping you and assisting you to evaluate that risk, then you will not get paid your premiums. That's just the way it is. And I've been on the
Yeah.
receiving end of that where I'm working, I'm trying to collect a premium, and I'm being told no, that's never going to happen. And I'm like, but when we filled out the questionnaire to receive cyber insurance, we met all the qualifications that you had, but it's so nuanced, and that's really the problem. So to answer your
Hmm.
question, that's one of the services otherwise we're going to provide to small medium businesses particularly, is just the ability to go in and help evaluate that risk and do it on a person to person, business to business basis. and evaluating
Hmm.
that risk basically off of based on the industry. So I have a at this point in my career a GRC background. So for myself and throughout my career I've mapped out probably like 40 frameworks to different industries. Not all industries use all frameworks, but for myself
Yep.
I've mapped that within our company to help evaluate per industry what that those risks really look like and really what
Hmm.
to help the companies themselves so they don't have to go out and hire somebody else. What does it
Hmm.
look like for your industry to be able to secure that system? And then at this point, what offerings and products can we provide based on your industry specifically? And another key difference I would say for us as a cyber insurance provider is we otherwise take a very different approach. We're looking more so at the data coverage and the data loss because, in my perspective, an incident is an incident. You know, when you're in a SOC and you are responding to an incident, at the end of the day, it's really about what if you water it down, what information was lost, how much is it going to cost me? And that's kind of what we focus on instead of was it ransomware, was it denial of service, was it, you know, some of these insurance companies get into that and
Hmm.
I think it's misguided to go down that rabbit hole because you'll never cybersecurity is
There's
so
always a gotcha.
nuanced. There's oh yes, exactly.
There's always a gotcha. There's
There's
always a new
always a
zero
gotcha.
day. You might
Yes,
not patch your thing. There's user error. Someone might click the link. How are you going to stop everyone from clicking a sufficient? There's always only got to be one person, right?
exactly.
To
It's
for it
only
to then propagate.
yeah, with you know, with as I'm sure you've seen with, you know, your experience and background, it takes one incident to happen and then you have a nightmare for incident response and handling on your hands. I've been in that situation too. So we step away from really I guess expecting businesses to qualify their events and really we look at the data specifically. We assist with the governance risk and compliance aspect per industry, which I think is a little bit different than what a lot of other people do. It's either you can get the GRC or you can get the insurance, but you typically can't get both. And a lot
Hmm.
of I'll say this as well, I've seen a lot of products out there and I would really, and again, not to like sit here and plug my own business just because it's my business, but you know, realistically, I see a lot of products that, you know, maybe they're like an endpoint monitoring system of some type, but that doesn't mean
Hmm.
that you have a GRC structure to ensure that your, you know, like an audit would come back with an appropriate
Good.
risk vector.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have some of these compliance pieces that you need in house and then at that point,
Yep.
you don't get your premiums paid out because you don't have the compliance governance piece to it. All you're doing is
Yep.
doing a passive monitoring. So I
Yep.
personally would advise those small and medium businesses stay away from companies that are doing that where they're showing you a shiny detection tool and that's great.
Hmm.
I think that's necessary, but if they're trying to sell you that in conjunction with insurance, you're not getting your premium. I would 10 times out of 10 after post incident, I would guarantee you're not going to get your premium back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've been in situations where, in companies I've consulted where they're like, "Yeah, we've got all that handled. We have this software that's installed is telling us that we're compliant." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know any software that's going to, or any agent that you install on your machines that's going to tell you about any procedural or administrative controls that you should be
there
having
you go.
for that.
Yeah,
Hey, that technical controls, yeah, that's defined. There's logic that you can program into that agent to go and find to see if there's any violations of, but
exactly.
administrative procedural controls, that agent's not looking at your processes, it's not interviewing your staff to make sure they actually know these processes exist and they're being followed, etc. That takes a human in the mix to actually validate that and make sure
Mhm.
that's actually happening. And that's where you're having a GRC SME like yourself or myself to be able to come in and evaluate and really take in some sort of investment into the environment. Because like you said before, like if a company too is just trying to sell you the insurance and they don't actually take the time to really understand what are they insuring,
Exactly.
most of the time you're not going to get paid out. That they're just trying to collect that check.
They
A
are.
real
Yeah.
insurance company that actually cares is going to do exactly what you just said, help you evaluate the risk. So not only for the benefit of the policyholder so they know what risk they're facing, but you too as the insurer, you know what you're on the hook for insurance.
And that, I think what you just said is exactly kind of the differentiator between other insurance and my insurance company that I've started. But again, I'm coming from a background that's more technical, and I really, me and the people I work with, we really understand, and I help them really put these pieces together of what's
Mhm.
important, what's not. Yes, it's important, just to be transparent, it's important for me as a company to make money
Mhm.
so that I can support the staff that is working with me, but it's also important for me as like a small business owner to make sure I'm giving a product that makes sense and is actually doing what it's supposed to do.
Yep. While we're,
Yeah.
well, and sorry, you had something else you want to touch on?
The only other thing I was going to say, really, this kind of goes into what I was talking about with the futures. The only thing otherwise that would differentiate our product offering is, we do have some similar language to work with any quantum issues that may arise, especially with cryptography piece. I think that's the biggest concern at this moment is the quantum cryptography and migrating quantum resistant keys and things like that. So that differentiates
Yep.
our insurance is some quantum, I would say quantum friendly language that I've developed mostly through doing this course with University of
Hmm.
Chicago, and also just some self study of what that, what is it going to have to look like within the next
Hmm.
5 years if quantum does hit the fan and now you have all of this data that's the, harvest now, decrypt later type of situation. We have some
That
protections
is.
for that.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about it, the nasty things that could potentially happen. Once that quantum computing becomes more accessible, especially to our counterparts across the pond, if they're able to, capture anything that they've been able to capture over the years, once they have access to quantum computing, they're gonna crack it like Swiss cheese, like a piñata.
Hmm.
And what I'm seeing now is in the industry, people are now starting to talk about it a little bit more because we thought it was a lot farther out than we thought. It's
Yeah.
actually quantum computing is, I feel, right around the corner. So companies, organizations, governments need to start thinking about what are they going to do when quantum computing really is a thing that's accessible. Do they have the right controls in place to help prevent against being
Hmm.
just cracked left and right with quantum computing? Because you got to think about it. These regular AES with the lower bit ciphers,
Yeah.
or just it's not just AES, but any other pieces of encryption that are just vulnerable to the computational power that quantum computing is going to provide. If the computer can run the calculations and figure out the right key, it's a wrap from there. There's a
Precisely.
lot of
Yeah.
different applications
Yeah.
for quantum computing, not only just for cracking cryptography, building cyber weapons, new cures for diseases, things along those lines. But I haven't been able to study too much into quantum computing, and I'm definitely going to check out the course that you're referring to. I love learning. That's how I've been able to stay in the game pretty
Yeah.
much and stay relevant, is just learning the skills that are actually relevant to this day and age. And I started to touch a little bit on, like, I started to do a little bit of research learning about qubits, how they can be true and false at the same time, and
Hmm.
the real computational, the exponential increase in computational power versus our regular 64-bit computers. It's pretty insane.
It
But
is.
I'll
Yeah.
definitely check that out to see, to learn a little bit more. And I need CPE regardless
There
to
you
keep these
go. Yeah.
certifications up to date.
Yeah, exactly.
So, while we're touching on, you mentioned your background. Could you tell us our audience, a little bit about your background and how you got started in the world of IT and security?
Yeah, so I actually started with everything related to cyber threat intelligence actually. So for me, that was
Mhm.
my foothold into the door. I was, I'm previous military, so that provided some opportunities for
Mhm.
myself, and took some courses, did, really hustled to try to get as much experience as I could with the opportunities that I had. Some of that included some fusion work, at like a SOC
Mhm.
environment. And And then from there, almost very quickly was voluntold that I was definitely going to be more so in like a more strategic role, working on
Hmm.
governance risk compliance types of efforts. But that's overall how I started. It's been great. I also tell like some of the, these, if I ever have the opportunity to chat with like people in high school or college,
Hmm.
like when I was in high school, I took Calc 1 stats and like econ between college and high
Pretty much
school.
the same.
And I took linear algebra. I haven't really used that in my career, honestly. But now, as of
Uh,
2024, I was expected to go back because like cybersecurity kind of opened and I had to have a larger math basis like stacked on top of my coding skills,
mhm.
so I just wanted to say that also, even though I haven't used some of those skills in my career and it hasn't been math heavy, I don't know if you've felt the same way, but from the time I started to now, I'm kind of seeing the trend that we might have to get back into the realm of math and integrating that into cybersecurity services and things like that with the way that cybersecurity has evolved.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't used any of my Algebra 1, Algebra 2, or
Right.
really any crazy mathematical skills that I've learned throughout college and in high school. But what it did teach me was how to understand formulas, right? And logic.
Yes.
And
And logic.
as a programmer myself, X plus Y equals XY, whatever, and I can see how when in programming, how that comes into play with just understanding that, hey, you have a defined logic and order of operations of you define this function has these specific operands in it. You're able to define certain logic for it to do certain things and how that comes into play when that whole program is executed. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the same exact thing as the math that we learned, but I definitely feel like it's more entertaining for me and it resonates better with me actually being able to see the whole logic written out. Sometimes people's code are only literally one letter named functions for everything and you have to sit there and demangle it and figure out, what exactly is this code doing, but I think it's helped me out in that sense. And in terms of using math in cybersecurity, I think it's math and cybersecurity has always gone hand in hand, especially when you're talking about cryptography, right?
There you
Because
go.
at the end of the day, cryptography is a bunch of computations. It's a
Yes.
long formula, an algorithm that's been defined in some way, shape, or form. And the mathematicians, cryptographers, really, what people call
Yeah.
them, cryptographers, they're mathematicians. They're super advanced mathematicians
Mhm.
that are designing these algorithms that are securing the applications that we use, securing the communications on the wire. So I think that part hasn't been lost. I just think it's becoming even more and more relevant. And in addition
Mhm.
to large language models, everyone
Yes.
thinks AI everybody thinks AI is just some sentient being. No, it's literally just a bunch of numbers
Yes.
that have been trained to understand certain sequences that could happen given a predicted text, right? And
Precisely.
I forgot the model weight training. I forgot the specifics of it. That's part of one of the trainings that I just did like a couple months ago when I wanted to learn a little bit more about AI. Because it's like, okay, what really is this? Oh, this is really a large language model that's
Yeah.
using machine learning to understand and predict the rest. So it's not there's different levels to it, but definitely can understand and resonate with that. While we're on that space and we're talking about math skills and etc. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone that is just starting out their career in cybersecurity? What do you think is the most important skills that a professional should develop?
Oh man. Yeah. That's a great question. So honestly, I typically recommend these two things. Number 1, I know everybody hates this when I say this. I definitely think you should take a networking class of some type. I don't care if it's
I
Net
agree.
Plus, I don't care if it's Sec Plus, and a lot of people don't like that when I say that. I understand it. I know where you're coming from. we can have the debate about whether, CompTIA is just a money making machine or not later, but it does provide a very necessary foundation that you have to understand for cybersecurity. So if you don't want
Yep.
to do it through CompTIA, find something for networking specifically.
Yep.
The next thing I definitely would say, like on the hard skill level, is tooling. Like there's certain tools that you just need to know how to work with, operate. I would always say, see, all of mine are like network based though, and
Right.
it should.
And map.
Yeah, I should. So I'll say it this way to not make it specific. If you have a particular interest, whatever the general tools are for that domain, make sure you know them. So, I think that typically helps. And then, I mean, listen, if you know some of these tools based on the domain that you're interested in, even that there's so much cross domain efficiency and things like that happens that chances are if an employer says, "Hey, well, do you know this specific tool?" You can always say,
Mhm.
No, I don't, but I have used this tool before, and this is what based on my knowledge of this is what I would recommend, and I have no problem otherwise learning new tools rapidly." And just, you can
Yeah.
say it that way.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with the first part because that was what set me up for the career that I've been able to blessed to have. Is when I understood the networking side of things,
Yeah.
everything else fell into place. It
Mhm.
was the foundation that I was able to build on top of to learn my hacking skills, to learn my incident response skills, so I can really understand how does IT work? How do
Mhm.
packets get? How does the data get from my computer here and up to the cloud or out to where how does my email get to somebody else or halfway across the world? Like how does that logically happen? How does
Yeah.
that happen on how does it go on every single layer? Like just simple things like just understanding the OSI model and what each layer is doing. That's a key thing that's going to pay dividends throughout your career time and time again, no matter if you're in GRC, no matter
Yes.
if you're in incident response, no matter what it is, because
Yep.
you have to have that basic foundational understanding to really understand what you're trying to secure. Because without that, I feel like if you don't understand at a foundational level how data gets from one place to the other,
Exactly.
how could you help secure? How could you help secure it?
Exactly.
That's
Even
that's just how I feel.
No, precisely.
Some
Even for like software, because I'm personally having to upskill right now on open source software skills specifically.
mhm,
And having that network basis and background, I can tell you it's made the upskill that I need to do for my job right now exponentially easier, because I really thought about it and I was like, well, if I didn't have this basic foundation, I would be so lost. And software networking, sometimes
yep.
people don't, maybe don't see, they kind of see it as siloed environments, but of course, that's not the case. And it's made it exponentially easier. So whatever domain it is, networking is key. Like a networking course is key. Yeah, I completely agree.
Not only that, on to your second point, being able to understand the tools of whatever specific domain that you're getting into, I think that's just the bare minimum. Because if you get an interview with me and you're trying to be a hacker, I'm going to ask you, all right, what tools are you familiar
Yeah,
with,
that's
or
true.
are you going to use? And if you can't even tell me certain tools that you would use, or if I ask you about a tool and you can't explain to me what that tool is used for, or tell me about your experience with whatever tools that you're comfortable with, what you've learned, because
Yes,
there's tools for everything, right?
everything.
There's tools for
Everything.
everything, and there's multiple versions of a
Yeah,
tool with just different names, especially in the open source community with different names
very
that accomplish
yes.
some of the same things.
Yeah.
So just because you don't have experience with one tool doesn't mean you don't have experience in that specific area, but you got to be able to articulate your experience with whatever tools that you have, or how you would use that tool or pick up the tool quickly. Like, hey, I look at the documentation, look at the tech specs, look at the API, and see, how
Yep.
could you leverage it? Things along those lines, and just understanding, explaining how you would your thought process of how you would go about adopting that tool in a secure manner and putting it into practice.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would say this for anybody that's new in cybersecurity and interviewing. I also always recommend this question, and I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know if I dreamed this question one night or if who someone told me this. I have no clue. I've always used it ever since I was like in high school interviewing for being a lifeguard and stuff. I always say ask the question within the next 90 days, what problem can I help solve? And if you'll allow me, let me explain to you how I would solve that problem, and ask that in the interview. Sometimes employers won't have anything for you because they're not ready.
They weren't ready for that. And it's
Yeah.
crazy that you even said that because I heard that from somebody somewhere, and I've used that in any interview that I've gotten into.
Yeah.
And 90% of the time I won that contract or got that job because I asked, "Hey, what are you looking for a candidate or for the organization to accomplish within the first 30, 60, 90 days of onboarding?"
Yes.
They give you the goals and you walk them through exactly step by step how you would go about accomplishing that so they can see your thought process. It's like you're
Yeah.
giving them the free trial of what they would be investing into. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great way to showcase your thought process, and especially if you're somebody who maybe you don't have a tenure in that specific field, but it's a great way again to showcase your thought process to the people who are actually making the decisions to bring you on board or not.
Exactly. And because a lot of the time, cybersecurity is also collaborative. I can solve one problem a couple different ways. So even if
Hmm.
that's not the way that that interviewer would solve that problem, that could potentially be a way that there's some aspect of that that can be of benefit, even if it's even if it's not the correct right answer.
Hmm.
Like you said, it shows the thought process. It shows that you're willing to take initiative. And I, as well, have never not been offered a job when I ask that question. So I really believe in it. I think it works 100% of the time.
So I can definitely resonate with you on that one again, because I think the one time I didn't end up getting an opportunity at the place that I use at yeah, now that I recall correct, yeah, they pulled the job down. They lost funding. Well, at least that's what I was told
The
by the recruiting company.
lost
They
funding.
they, they lost funding and made it to the final round, et cetera, all that good stuff. But is what it is.
Right.
But nonetheless, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the beginning of your career, Barbara, what would it be?
Oh, I definitely would say I would definitely say, and I don't know if you felt you had this in your career as well. Just be ready to be flexible and be ready to learn every single quarter a new skill.
Yeah,
And
I've had to I've had to be that flexible because job descriptions is one thing I tell people because I mentor a lot of people who are trying to get into IT and cybersecurity and trying to excel throughout the corporate ladder, of course, and accomplish their career goals. Is that you got to be adaptable because what you got hired for 1 year, the next year the business may not even have a need for that.
exactly.
And if you don't adapt to what the business needs, the business is going to make some changes. And whether that
Exactly.
mean hiring someone else, getting rid of you, or transitioning you to another domain,
Mhm.
you have to be flexible and you have to showcase that you're willing to take that initiative and not begrudgingly, right?
Not begrudge
Maybe in the
exactly.
maybe in the background, like you keep that to yourself, but not begrudgingly, because you don't want to be quote unquote voluntold. And I've been in those scenarios where voluntold you're going to do something.
Mhm.
I like to just volunteer instead of being voluntold because it kind of changes the whole dynamic. But sometimes you can't avoid it.
You can't
Like it's
avoid,
things that
yeah.
you weren't even aware you weren't even aware of it. But when you are voluntold, that you take it on with a smile on the face, and you go and do the due diligence that you need to upskill and be
Upskill.
a contributing member
Yeah.
to that specific initiative.
Exactly. And another thing, especially for any individuals going into the corporate side or larger corporations, I will say this: if I could tell myself one thing, the quicker you can understand how to quantify cybersecurity implementation as from like a business standpoint and help that business understand where their money is going, you will never be
Mhm.
without a job, because that is, and a lot of people don't want to do that. I understand everyone wants to be hands-on keyboard, wants to like continue. I personally think that the hands-on keyboard, we're going to go through another phase like we had talked about before. The automation's going to come in. People are going to think
Mhm.
this automation, will replace everybody's jobs. They're going to find out, nope, you still need people.
Yep.
Otherwise, you open yourself up to an unacceptable margin of risk, and then they'll hire people back. But to kind of avoid those ebbs and flows, make yourself useful, figure out how to quantify the money aspect, and that kind of saves you from having to recycle too many times, if that makes sense. Because there's some burnout that can
Yeah.
happen if you cycle too many times.
Oh, of course. And
Yeah.
I've dealt with burnout throughout my career
Yeah.
as well. And I can definitely understand you when you say if you can learn how to quantify, if you can learn how to quantify, risk, if you learn how to quantify risk, you'll never be without a job. You can write your ticket anywhere because that's
Yes.
one of the skills to be able to to have the technical skill set and to be able to translate that into the soft skills that's necessary for you to communicate that to the an executive group or board,
Yes. Yeah.
your manager, in terms that they can understand it. That's priceless. It's priceless
Yeah.
because one of the biggest things, like again, this is information technology, information security. We're
Mhm.
facilitating the transfer of highly technical information into terms where, and I don't want to say, like, I hate using the phrase dumbing it down. I heard people use that phrase. I can't think of a better analogy
Well,
right now, but
simplifying
basically
it. You have to
simplifying, you're tailoring the
yeah.
message to your audience.
No,
But
yeah, precisely. I completely agree because you have to think about it. I mean, at the end of the day, these businesses, they unfortunately we're also fighting a historic, maybe not a historic, but traditionally cybersecurity has been seen as optional, and we're fighting that stigma still, I would say.
yeah, it's not optional. Your business
Yeah,
could be out of business if you don't have the right controls in place or the
exactly.
right protections, like insurance, like
Yeah,
we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And I think companies are really, really starting to come around and they're gobbling up as much cybersecurity resources as they can now. But I still think, me personally, that we're kind of on the cusp of within the boardroom, within the C-suite, they're still looking at cybersecurity as like, well, we can cut this but part of the budget because we haven't had a critical incident in 6 months. We can cut the budget and downgrade
Yep.
because we have these new tools in place. And it's like you really have to have a CTO like myself or you that can help, like we're talking about, really help them understand that risk, quantify it, what that looks like in dollar amounts, and be
Hmm.
able to say, well, right now, I think there was a statistic that was put out by like Palo Alto or something. I think like 25% of all cybersecurity incidents still have a physical security aspect to it, something like that. So
Hmm.
that doesn't go away just because you have a tool. That doesn't go away.
Yep.
These risks don't go away just because you think you bought an endpoint type of system that catches everything. That's not the way these systems are working. So definitely, and I think a lot of people think that CTO level happens after like 10, 15 years. For me, I was in expectation that I get into that role at year 3. And even though I didn't have like the CTO label, I was acting as a
Hmm.
CTO. I was advising. I
Yeah.
was, so I feel like it happens very quickly in your career. So just embrace it and start acting as that consultant and really quantifying it, like you're saying. It's the best skill you can have, even though it's not like
Yep.
hands-on keyboard. You
That's
there's
what makes the business move. That's what makes the need, as not only the business, but it also moves the needle in the right direction,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
You need your hands-on keyboard people, and you also need your strategic, the people who have the technical skill sets and have the soft skills to be able, again, to tailor the message to the right audience, to get the support and buy-in from the executives or leaders
exactly.
that are running the business, really. So
Yeah.
I definitely can agree with that. I know we're coming up on time here. I got a couple more questions
Okay, yeah, of
I wanted
course.
to get through. I actually got my son's baseball game. I'm running a little bit of tight on, but
Okay.
my last question really
Yeah.
is: when you're not fighting cyber threats, Barbara, what do you enjoy doing for fun?
I think like hopefully this isn't too like stereotypical, but anything outdoors, I have to totally unplug for myself. So anything that's like hiking, surfing, snowboarding, anything that's the exact complete opposite,
Hey.
I learned very quickly I need to get out, go do something different, and I really love it. I love cybersecurity. I love it. I definitely have to unplug though. And the only other I did want to mention this. I do well. I signed up to volunteer. Haven't had my first volunteer opportunity yet, but there's a program called Black Girls Hack, and they are a
Mhm.
nonprofit organization that I'll be working with as kind of like a volunteer and advisory for new high school cybersecurity experts. That's what I'm going to start calling them. And
That's awesome. I'm familiar with that. My
oh,
my
are you?
sister my sister is in that program, but I don't think she's been too involved lately. But definitely plug you guys up. My little sister wanted to follow my footsteps to become a hacker. She loves seeing that excitement when I'm screaming. I find a 0 day or something in one of my clients, and you get to
That's
get on the call and
amazing.
tell them.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah,
I love to hear that. We need more of it. We need more people that want to do it so that, that
yep.
organization, I met with one of the chief operating officers, and they have, it seems like, a lot of great things for these kids. So just wanted to mention that that's a great organization to work with if there's a need.
Any listeners that are
Yeah.
listening out there, that you want to check it out, definitely check out the organization. Other than that, I really didn't have anything else for us to go through today. I really want to take the time to say thank you again for coming on the show, and I'm sorry about the scheduling mishaps because to our listeners out there, we were actually supposed to record this yesterday, but had a conflict that ran over. But I'm glad Barbara made some time for us today. Thank you again for sharing your incredible insights and experience with us. It really has been a pleasure. For our listeners that would like to catch up with you online somewhere, where can they find you, Barbara?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a Facebook page. I also have a website. Don't roast me too bad because the website, there's certain portions that are still under development. But please reach out on one of those forums, either on my website or on the Facebook page that we have. We'll be happy to sit down with your small medium business. At this point, we're really focused on the small medium business
Hmm.
enterprises, but we'll be happy to reach out and give you a quote and see if there's a good fit for your insurance needs. And thank you so much for having me on here. And listen, it's
No
no problem.
problem.
I'm really flexible. So yesterday I was thinking, I hope that I'm not missing you. I was like, did I click something wrong? And no, it all worked
Yeah.
out.
No, I felt bad because I pushed it back 30 minutes already, and then I was late another 20 minutes. I'm like, this is 55 minutes late. This is horrible on my end, but I appreciate you being flexible and still taking the time to come on the show. We'll definitely include any links to your websites and to your company in the show notes. For our listeners that are brand new and this is your first time actually hearing the podcast, please don't forget to like and subscribe for the podcast on whatever medium that you're on for more conversations with IT and security leaders like Barbara. Until next time, stay safe, stay secure.